My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am what I am.
I'm joined today by Dr. Roderic O'Gorman, who is the Green Party candidate for Dublin West. Roderic, welcome back to Dublin City FM.
Thanks a million for having me, Mick.
And specifically welcome to LGBTlife. Roderic, you're one of the first people I met who was unashamed about saying, I'm a candidate, I'm in the Green Party, and I'm a gay person. It was almost like this is, I have no concern about how I am perceived in that sense of the word. Was that courageous to do it at the time?
I'm not sure if it was courageous. For me, it was the natural thing to do. I remember I first ran for the local elections in 2004.
Was it that long?
Yeah, good long while ago now,
Yeah.
12 years ago. And I remember at my selection convention with the local Green members, I thought it was important just to be clear about the issue. I think in 2004, at that stage, we had no openly gay members of the Dail. Probably Senator Norris was the only openly gay politician in the country. So even then, and it's only 12 years ago, but a lot has changed. It wasn't quite as I suppose normal for gay people to be running and getting elected. I know gay candidates had run before, but successfully getting elected. So I felt it was important just to make it clear to my party colleagues that I was gay, and there was the potential that some in the electorate may see that as a negative force. But certainly within the Green Party, it was just simply never an issue. And I'm always very grateful to be part of a party that, like I remember one or two people kind of laughed when I said it in the conference, just because they couldn't have cared less. They were interested in the politics, not really the personal life.
Mm-hmm. You're a member of the Green Party, and in fact you're the chair of the Green Party.
Yeah.
If there was a pink party, would you leave the Green Party or do you think sexual orientation impacts politics at all?
Does it impact? Well, first on your first question, no, I wouldn't leave the Green Party. I've been I've been a supporter of the Green Party and active in the Green Party since I was like 11 or 12.
10, I actually.
Yeah, no, 10 probably was 10. Yeah, it was 20. It's the 1992 general election. Trevor took me out canvassing with him. Politics, it was the environmental concerns drew me into politics, and that's why I'm in there originally. And the Green Party is the only party back then and today that sees the environment as essential for all our lives, not in some abstract sense, not in some kind of Gaia sense, but in the sense that all of us, we can't have a good place to live, a good place to work, a good place to raise our kids if our environment isn't good. And that's where my politics with the Green Party originates. I'm very lucky in that the Green Party has also a very broad and progressive social agenda as well, where people, regardless of the background, regardless of their sexuality, their ethnicity, their religion or lack thereof, they are all widely welcomed. I think we were the first party that had an openly gay candidate running for us. That was John Goodwillie, who ran for us in Dublin South Central for a number of years in the 90s. So candidates being gay have always been just broadly welcomed within the party.
Sure. Leaving aside the beard and the sexual orientation, what you share with Dr. David Norris is that you're both academics in the sense that you both worked at universities. I just wonder, did David, who we both know very well, did he cloud the view of people as to how we should expect an LGBT politician to behave? Because David is quite flamboyant, whereas you'd be a much more, I would say, a considered candidate, not to be any disrespectful to David.
Did he cloud it? That's a tough question. I think. Yeah, no, it's one I'd never really thought of. I suppose, look, Senator Norris has a particular approach. It is, as you say, flamboyant, and he's been able to use that to draw attention to issues in a way that those issues might have been neglected otherwise. And sometimes you use whatever tools you have to bring attention to the particular issue. As I'm a law lecturer. I'm, I suppose, a bit bookish in that way. I come things from a fairly quiet look at the problem, look at the law, and see can you use the law or other mechanisms to find a way to address it. So that's I think everyone has their own approach.
Yes, in fact, between the pair of you, it's probably a difference between style and substance. Because when I was covering an event during Pride last year, David was the main speaker. He would have been anyway, irrespective of who was there. But what he was saying is that what differentiated him between the activists in the 70s and 80s is he saw the law as the liberation.
He did,
avenue,
and he took the huge personal risk with the court case. And I teach, when I'm teaching constitutional law, I teach that case to first years every year. I've been teaching it for about 9 or 10 years, and I remember you'd say you'd speak about the offence, which was buggery, for example, and you'd say it back I remember when I first started teaching it, you'd have giggles in the class. Now no one is bothered. I think people are more just disgusted with the decision in the Supreme Court and the language used by some of the majority judges there. So even in teaching that case, I've seen a change in people's attitudes and in students' attitudes over the years.
Has that characterised the way you approach politics and particularly the law? Because we had what I consider a momentous event last year on the 22nd of May. But in essence, the legal establishment had a poor history, in my estimation, of once this issue came before. And I'm talking about the Irish legal establishment. Eventually, we had to get the Europeans to do it. What's your, as an LGBT man and as a lawyer, how do you feel about that? Could it have been handled better?
Well, I would have always argued, let's say, taking the Zapponi and Gilligan case, which was only heard in the High Court, and didn't get to the Supreme Court. I would always argue that it would have been possible for the Irish courts to find that there was a right to marry for LGBT couples contained within the Constitution. Prior to the referendum, as you know, it didn't define whether it was same-sex or opposite sex, and there was a judgment in the High Court that said it was only opposite sex. But that was the decision that was taken. I think it would have been a shock had the Supreme Court overturned that, to be honest. I think legally I could see an argument why, but I think you also have to look at what are the likelihood, and I think it would have been very unlikely that a majority of the Irish Supreme Court would have ruled in favour of Zapponi and Gilligan. And as such, I think the referendum was probably was the approach that was most likely to bring about success, even though, and I think well up into the campaign, I didn't think the outcome was a foregone conclusion. I didn't believe those initial polls. I was always very sceptical, and it was only probably about 2 weeks out, when I'd been out canvassing for about 2 months at that stage, that I was like, you know what, maybe it's time to embrace the optimism, because that fall away of the yes vote that I'd always been afraid we'd see during the campaign wasn't happening.
If it's any consolation, I never had any doubt about it, because I said to people I had every confidence in the fairness of the ordinary, decent Irish.
Well, it's not
person.
often you'll get a politician admitting he was wrong on something, but I'd called it wrong. I thought it would be a lot tighter, but I've never been more happy to be proved wrong.
Yes. Do you think it made a huge difference in what? How do you think that this might affect the LGBT community from here on in, as we say?
Well, I think it's probably the biggest thing is for young people, the fact that the ambition, the idea, the possibility of getting married, of establishing a family and being regarded by your own country as a family is incredibly important in the context of when young people are coming out, to make that process, which is a tough process, as easy as possible. I think again in the period of time since I came out, it has changed dramatically. I'm on the board of management now of 2 secondary schools. There are countless openly gay students in those schools. Like I wouldn't have dreamed of coming out in secondary school. No possibility of it in my mind. Whereas now that situation has changed completely in many schools. So I think from a national perspective, I think that probably the biggest impact will be seen for young people. I think internationally, though, obviously it was very important as well, and it certainly did increase pressure in many other, I suppose, developed first world countries. It's increased pressure in Australia. It's increased pressure in Germany. Hasn't tipped them over yet, unfortunately, but even recently we saw Greece, which would have quite a traditional conservative religious approach, have adopted civil partnerships. And I would always say that, you know, in Ireland, and I suppose I'm saying this as a Green because we drove civil partnerships when we were in government. I believe achieving civil partnership was a huge step towards creating the climate where we got that very substantial yes vote, because people saw civil partnerships, they saw that it created no threat to existing marriages, but they also understood that civil partnerships didn't have the protection of the Constitution, so they understood that difference.
Yes, it's a couple of days after the referendum. I was talking to a senior Labour Party politician, and he was saying to me he didn't think that the Labour Party got enough credit for the marriage equality referendum.
Yeah.
I would contend that the Green Party didn't get sufficient credit because you didn't blow your own trumpet over it. In retrospect, is that a mistake, or is that just this is the way the Green Party operates? We make change without necessarily taking the credit for it.
I think you know, what was most important was to get that referendum passed. Like even in my own area, I didn't really campaign as a Green. I co-led the Yes Equality campaign across party and non-party campaign in Dublin West because I just thought it was too important an issue to retreat into party politics. No, we didn't. I am disappointed by the lack of credit that we got for the civil partnerships. I think civil partnerships was a huge step forward for the 6 years between that and the introduction of marriage. They provided, I think it was probably in the end about 2,000 couples with very substantial range of protection. And I think though that the most important thing civil partnership did was it normalised, and I know that's a nasty word, but you know, it showed regularised. Yes, that's a better word. It regularised the idea of official state recognition of LGBT relationships, and it showed people that there was nothing to fear from that. And I think it was a major chink into the argument by the no side that somehow this will undermine society, because people were seeing these ceremonies taking place, and you could very easily make the argument, well, this is allowed, why can't we go the step further and give full marriage rights?
Going back to the days of the civil rights movement, if you like, the mantra was that you had to see beyond the colour of a person's skin to see the person. Do you think that's what civil partnerships did? Is it allows us to say this is Roderic O'Gorman, not this is gay Roderic O'Gorman? Yeah,
I think it did a lot there, and I suppose just it allowed people to think, well, why do these couples want these set of rights? Why do they need protections? And it allowed people to start telling their stories. And as we know, the stories were an incredible part in driving the marriage campaign. But those stories started with the civil partnership, the drive to achieve civil partnership, and subsequently the I suppose the practical reality of people getting civil partnerships over a number of years.
Yeah. Let's turn to politics, Roderic. In 2011, many people would have said the Greens are devastated, this is a souffle that's not going to rise again. Come the 2014 local elections, people like yourself and several others suggested that trend is being reversed. What's the current status there? Do you think you've even built on that since 2014?
I certainly do, yeah. And of course in 2014 Eamon Ryan was about 1,500 votes off taking a European seat, which would have been an absolutely huge coup, and it was just a big disappointment he didn't make it, but obviously he's running in Dublin Bay South in this general election. No, I certainly feel that the position of the party has strengthened. You have to remember, we're running a candidate in every constituency in the country. We're running far more than Renewa, than the Social Democrats, because we still see ourselves, and we still still are a national party. We have a presence all over the country. It's small in some places, no doubt about it, but it is across the country. And in my own constituency of Dublin West, since I've got elected to the council, I think I've been able, I suppose over the years I was tipping away there, but I've been able to prove my own worth, what I can deliver on the council, but also, highlighting and not only highlighting issues like bad planning and the legacy of bad developers over the years, but actually bringing in practical solutions, practical improvements that can deal with those problems. I think that's very much what the Greens is about. We're not just the vision, we're not just the long-term view, but we're also looking at practical solutions to the problems the country face.
Can I put something to you then, Roderic? Sorry. I covered an event in Wood Key during the European elections, and I just wonder at times with the Green Party, is the message, are you seeing how the message is being received as it is being transmitted? And the case I want to put to you is that Eamon Ryan spoke at that. Now, this was an event that was organised by Glenn and Tenny, so it was very much almost an exclusively LGBT event. All the candidates were there, all the European candidates, and Eamon at an LGBT event said he would welcome the Pope coming to his church, and I thought, oh, Eamon, you've just lost so many votes. It was unnecessary to say it, and I just wonder, was there a degree of naivety there? You say he only lost it by a small number of votes, and I just wonder.
Well, look, Eamon is a practicing Catholic.
Yeah.
Eamon is a practicing Catholic who, as I understand, goes to mass every week. So
that was very much the impression he got.
I think Eamon is very proud of Pope Francis, in contrast to that which has gone before, as are many practicing Catholics. Look, Mick, I'm an atheist. I have no issue if Pope Francis goes to anyone's church, but Eamon, I think Eamon is upfront about everything.
Yeah. Oh, he's
upfront about that. Like Eamon is out calling for a referendum to remove the Eighth Amendment. Eamon is out on a very strong pro-choice position, but is also able to say that he welcomes and he finds that consistent with his own beliefs. So he could have maybe. He might have not said that, but he's upfront about where he stands on issues. So I don't think that's naivety. I just think that's honesty, to be honest.
Maybe he was more focused on Dublin Bayside.
Well, perhaps I don't know. But look, there were some people who wanted to make the marriage referendum about bash the church, and that would have been a massive mistake.
Indeed.
And I think Eamon understood that right now. Like, we won that referendum because people who'd gone to mass that morning left mass, went to the ballot box and voted yes. So I think Eamon and the view he represents there as modern progressive Catholics is an important constituency still in the country.
Let's talk about the general election, because you're a candidate in the general election.
Yeah.
We expect it to be in the next 6 weeks or so. Dublin West, it's a tricky one in the sense that you've got 3 or 4 sitting members there.
Three sitting TDs. Joe Higgins retiring this stage, but some really big names. Obviously, the Taoiseach Joan Burton, Minister for Health Leo Varadker, and Ruth Coppinger of the Socialist Party. So as I say, there is a free seat this time around, and myself and the other candidates, we're working hard to fill that free seat. I suppose, as I say, I'm well known in the constituency. This is actually my 8th election in the last. You
have been a bit prolific out there, haven't you?
With the 2 by-elections as well. And I think it's important, like, obviously in the general election 2011 I did very poorly. I think I got 1.3% of the vote. 6 months after that I brought it back up to 5% in the first by-election. In the second by-election it was 6.5%, and obviously I got 9.5% in my ward in the council election. And since then I've been a councillor for 18 months and doing the job there. So look, I think I'm in with a shot for the last seat. I don't overstate my chances, but I think there's going to be a genuine dogfight for that last seat. It'll all come down to transfers, and I suppose I'm just looking for those number 1 votes off people to put me in a position to benefit from transfers later on.
You are a local boy, does that help?
It definitely does, yeah. No, I grew up just outside Mulhuddart, and I've been living in Blanche now since 2008, and other than, I lived in town for 1 or 2 years, and I was over in London for 1 year, but other than that I've lived in Dublin 15 all my life, so I would have a network there of school friends, of just, I suppose, neighbours and colleagues over the years. Yeah, I think it does help.
when I was working up in Cllr, Dublin North East was the constituency up there. The Green Party virtually never canvassed west of the Malahide Road there into areas like Cllr and Bonnybrook and Darndale. That may have been practical. I always thought that's sending out a signal that that working class issues are not either understood or are not identified with by the Green Party. Do you is that a strategy that you would follow and just canvass in the areas that perhaps?
Well, look, I suppose when I look and see where I've gotten votes or the parties that have gotten votes, I prioritise those for canvassing. But I'm talking when it comes for working and doing the constituency work, I work for all areas of the constituency. I suppose, like, we've 2 wards in Dublin West, we've the Castleknock ward and the Mulhuddart ward, and probably the Mulhuddart ward has greater areas of disadvantage, but I'd be working with many people there on as regards issues to do with housing, and obviously that's a key issue right now. I'd have a number of housing cases that I'd be progressing. So look, I'll work with anyone. I'll work for anybody who comes to me and says they have issues.
Yeah. If you look at the Castleknock ward, you've also got Fianna Fáil have got one of their great hopes there. I mean, between yourself and Mr. Chambers, is this going to be the clash of the overachievers?
Well, I don't know about overachiever, but look, I'm just, I suppose I'm going on my record, on my policies, but also I think the idea that the Green Party needs a voice in Dail, and we don't have any voice. That perspective we bring is missing in the Dáil at the moment. Fianna Fáil have plenty of voices, so I think giving 1 or 2 Green voices in the Dáil would be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, if I look at what distinguishes between different parties and different candidates, what I would say about the Green Party, and particularly about yourself as opposed to perhaps other parties and other candidates, it always seems to me that the Green Party is more focused on citizens and the other parties are more focused on consumers. Is that is that being too simplistic?
I think it's certainly one distinction, and that's a nice way to put it. I may throw that around myself again, but I think we have to see people as more than just being part of the marketplace. And I think the other big difference is looking in long term. The Green Party looks at issues in the long term. We plan for the future, whereas so many of the other parties the concern is the next election. We're talking about the next 10 years, the next 50 years. You even see that with something like housing at the moment, a very retrograde step the Minister for Environment has taken in allowing for smaller, lower quality housing. He makes the argument that, look, this is what the developers need to be able to afford to build houses, but the houses we build now, and we're going to have to build a lot in the next 5 years, they are going to last for 100 and 150 years, and therefore we need to ensure that they are of high quality so that people who live in them can heat them and live in them at an affordable price.
That suggests to me that we have a big elephant in the room, and I say this to all the people, whether it's housing, whatever the issue is, it's the market in that sense of the word. Do we need to somehow or other be more interventionist, or will the market get us out of all these problems like flooding and housing shortages and a whole range?
Look, the market plays a role, but you can't leave it just to the market. I think we saw what the word has escaped me now, but we saw what deregulation did during the early 2000s. We deregulated the banks, we deregulated so much, and we got the consequences in the economic crisis. So particularly in the area of housing, I think the state does need to be very interventionist in providing social housing, but also providing land for local authorities or for housing bodies to actually provide. I think there should be different models of housing provision, and look, private developers definitely play a role. Private developers who build it to good quality and obey the planning laws, they definitely have a role. But I think the state needs to take a much bigger role within the provision of housing.
On that basis then, the word deregulation is an interesting one in that sense of the word, because what we seem to have under a previous administration is that this euphemism light touch regulation, which to me suggested that, well, we have the laws out there, but we won't actually enforce them, or we won't pay much attention. Is that a fundamental difference between how the Green Party see, if you like, the world of politics and the world, and how perhaps the other parties do, in the sense that if we pass laws or we set standards, that they should be maintained rather than just have lip service paid to them?
Yes, absolutely, because, you know, when the public see standards are set for, you know, big companies, big developers, and they're not met, and they're allowed to get away with that. But when a member of the public doesn't pay their taxes or doesn't meet some small requirement, and the law comes down very heavily on them, that double standard really undermines respect for the rule of law in the country. And again, people have seen so little consequences for the excesses of the Celtic Tiger years, and even now, like out in Dublin West, we're dealing with situations where developers who flagrantly broke the planning laws during the boom years were quiet for the last few. Were claiming, oh listen, we can't do anything about our estate that isn't finished, we don't have the money. These developers are coming back and looking for planning permission for big developments again. The people who've lived in those unfinished developments are saying, how can this actually happen? And there are laws there to stop them, they're just not being implemented. So yeah, I think it's very important that we apply the same standards. Where we have laws, we enforce them for everybody, and it's not just for, you know, the citizens who have the laws enforced against them, but the richer people, the companies, the corporations can get away with things. The law must be enforced against them as well.
So can I then take it that planning will be a cornerstone of your platform?
Yeah, planning, I suppose planning is quite a bookish term,
Sure.
but it's planning for good housing. It's planning so we get schools at the same time as the housing's going in, not 10 years later after there's been a major crisis. It's planning to ensure that in Dublin 15, a growing area, our hospital in Connolly and our primary healthcare centres are providing the range of services that are needed. And it's planning to make sure we can finance that we actually are putting the money into our public services. Because we see everyone at the moment is saying, oh, it's terrible about the trolley crisis, oh, it's terrible about the class sizes, we're going to sort that out for you if you vote for us, and we're going to cut all your taxes as well. And at some point, I hope the electorate in this election say, listen, all these commitments cannot be met. We have to take a choice. Are we going to use the improved economic situation we have at the moment? Are we going to use it just to cut taxes all over the place? Or are we actually going to invest in our public services to deal with the major crises that are being faced there at the moment?
Looking at if Green Party gets sufficient number of candidates, and perhaps even we're there to, can you see Green Party propping up a minority government? Would you expect to be a coalition partner?
I would expect that the Greens will probably be in opposition if we get some TDs back in there. I would say that because learning from past experience, I think you need a substantial number of TDs if you're going into a coalition arrangement. I don't think 6 was enough the last time, so I would say you would need more than 6 if you're going into a coalition arrangement, and I think even on our best day we probably won't be doing that well this time around. As regards supporting a minority government, that, or indeed a decision to join a government as part of a coalition, that's a decision taken by the members. We haven't ruled anyone in or anyone out at this point, and it would be based on the policies being proposed by that particular government. So we make the decision on the basis of policy. But I think, in light of the fact it will probably be a Fine Gael-led government, and it may be a Fine Gael plus Renua plus Shane Ross right-wing independence, I don't really see a situation where a vote to support that sort of an administration would get through a convention of Green Party members. I don't see it happening, but we'll wait and see.
Perhaps there is a role there now for the Green Party to go to the electorate and say, irrespective of what happens, we're there to hold the government to account in a way that the Parliament has perhaps been deficient over the last, say, 5-10 years.
Yeah, I think definitely hold to account, but I think there's always a risk, and I think it's a risk we fell into in the past, in saying we're the watchdog, we're this holier than thou group that are going to wag our fingers at everyone, because we're flawed characters as well, and where you hold yourself up to be the watchdog, the media will very quickly find some flaw with you. So I think what we say is we're going in, and if we're in an opposition, we will be strong opposition, but we'll be constructive opposition. We'll bring forward private members legislation where we see the government is going wrong. We'll bring in forward amendments to legislation the government is proposing. That's what I'd see myself as doing, trying to give a positive, not only criticising the government where we feel they're going wrong, but give a positive alternative, and allow even the government the opportunity where we're providing better ideas to actually take them on board and amend their own legislation.
Sure. Green Party, I would expect, would be strong supporters, not necessarily of the scheme that the government introduced, but of the concept of water charges. In other words, we have to pay for the investment, we have to pay for the infrastructure, and at the end of the day, what we want is a good reliable product coming out of our taps. Is that an issue you're going to be talking up, or?
The issue of water charges, and I think just we don't agree with the approach the government has taken. I think it's important to say that. My first point is this, and I suppose I say this as a law lecturer as well: we must amend the constitution to make sure water can't be privatised. I think that is the biggest risk, that Irish water has been designed as a kind of a fatted cow that will be sold off to.
How's that
some
look about
big
it, doesn't it?
It absolutely does,
Yeah.
and we need a constitutional amendment to prevent that, and that would be I think that would be a red line issue for the Green Party, and we're seeing other parties come around to that now. We were the first party to drive this particular issue. Secondly then, we believe everyone is entitled to a generous free allowance of water, every person, not per household but per person within the house, and there should be an extra allowance for people who are unwell or who have other special requirements. But after that, after the use of free allowance, we would have some charge to discourage waste of water. And I say this because I know groups like Right to Change argue that this is an issue of social justice. Water should be paid through general taxation. The way I look at it is, I'm very happy for my tax euros to fund someone else's kids in school or someone else's elderly parents in a nursing home, but I'm not happy that my tax euros fund someone else's swimming pool or fund someone else washing their cars 3 times a week. That's not social justice for me. So for that reason, I think there should be some level of charge to ensure that those who waste water actually have to pay for that level of waste.
How then, water I understand, and I wouldn't have an issue with it, but should we go a bit further then? Do people not have a right to shelter? Do people not have a right to energy?
Absolutely.
I
Well,
wonder,
we'd
might a Bill of Rights not
Yeah.
be a better approach? You're the
Look, we're proposing a range of constitutional amendments as part of our manifesto, and certainly a right to housing would be something we'd look to insert in the constitution. We were very disappointed with the approach the government took to the Constitutional Convention. They set it up, they spent a lot of money on it, and literally only 2 of its recommendations were put to the people. Obviously, one was marriage equality, the second was the age of president issue, which was not the most important thing that the Constitutional Convention had discussed. So what we've said is the first thing we do is we would support putting all the recommendations of the Constitutional Convention to the people in a set of referendums, and included in that would be social and economic rights, like a right to housing and a right to healthcare as well, which I think is very important.
Yes. Something with an eye to the Mulhuddard ward in part of Dublin West. I say to people that in middle class areas, if you like, the economics of prosperity seem to play more, whether it's taxation, a whole range of other things. But in areas of disadvantage, the whole issue of austerity is very important, and I just wonder, what would the Green Party's approach be to, particularly to social welfare and the whole range of social welfare policies? Do you see it as too high? Do you see it that we should be putting more into it, and perhaps even where?
I don't think social welfare rates are too high, definitely. I would see what we've always argued is for an amalgamation of the social welfare and the taxation system. Look at issues like refundable tax credits, which could be used to, I suppose, note that people who are in work benefit from tax credits, people who aren't in work don't. Tax credits are, I suppose, a gift from, gift is the wrong word, but tax credits are a benefit the state confers on those in work, whereas those who aren't in work, social welfare is sometimes perceived as, this very, this drain on the state. That's not how I see it, and I think we have to understand that, the social welfare system is there as a safety net. But and I'd certainly look at some of the particular cuts that were made in social welfare over the last 5 years. I think maybe particularly the cut to lone parents allowance and the way that is impacting on a vulnerable group of society, making it more difficult for them for those parents to go out to get work. And I'd certainly look to reevaluate and undo cuts like that.
Just before we conclude, Roderic, you mentioned Eamon Ryan. Practicing Catholic will happily be out there, if you like, campaigning for a repeal of the eighth.
Yeah.
What about the issue of what we call education discrimination by baptism? Where does the Green Party come down on the whole issue of ethos and being able to discriminate against LGBT teachers and so on?
Well, I think the first thing is the Green Party have come out very strongly to say that we have to remove the ability of schools to discriminate in admission on the basis of religion or on the basis of special educational need, because that's something that's happening a lot, and I think maybe isn't as well known at the moment as the religious discrimination issue. My own personal view is I would like to see the school being a non-religious space. That's my personal view. But I understand in talking to many parents like the idea that their school has an ethos. So I think the desire to have the choice of schools with an ethos is one that's out there. It's a majority view, and it's one protected by the Constitution. So I accept that's the majority view. But I don't accept that a school should be able to discriminate on the basis of admission, on the basis of a child's religion, because that creates situations where you have children of only one religion going to a particular school and then everybody else going to another school, and it's dividing communities. And I'm actually seeing that in parts of Dublin West where we would have very large populations of children who wouldn't be of the Roman Catholic faith, where one set of schools deals with those children, another set of schools deals with Roman Catholic children, and it is creating a division within communities that I think could have really negative consequences in the long term. Okay,
just a couple of LGBT questions before we conclude, Roderic. We've passed equality, the marriage equality legislation. We've also passed gender recognition legislation. So we're regularising, and we've got a much more, if you like, enlightened view. How does the Green Party view the age of consent? It seems to be, if I'm correct, it's one rule for one law for heterosexual teenagers and another one for LGBT teenagers. Would you like to see that regularised?
I think the current situation of our consent laws, a lot of confusion was brought in. I'd say maybe in 2004, 2005, there was a number of cases regarding statutory rape. There was that emergency legislation brought in to deal with a decision of the Supreme Court that struck down the offence of statutory rape. I think perhaps that whole area needs to be examined again, because I think that the confusion also has consequences for heterosexual situations vis-a-vis whether it's a man or a woman who are the older age there. So I'll be honest, the party doesn't have a specific policy on it, but certainly speaking as a lawyer, I would see that entire area needs to be examined, and to make sure that all categories are treated the same.
Okay. Last but by no means least, if you went back 10 years, I was an unashamed supporter of the EU. My faith in the EU, while it hasn't been eliminated, I'm still very, very supportive of the EU and the concept of the EU. It took a bit of a knock when the financial crisis came in, and it seemed to me that the EU showed it was much more concerned with economics and business than it was with the social dimension. How did you feel about all of that? How did you look at the whole Greek crisis and the banking crisis and the response to it?
Almost exactly the same, in that I would have come from a situation where when I was young, before I studied law, I would have been very anti-EU. When I studied law, when I looked at what the European Union had achieved and its goals, my position changed, and I would have become a strong supporter of the EU, and was particularly pleased at the Lisbon Treaty to see the Charter of Fundamental Rights becoming part of European Union law. I've been very disappointed by the Union's response to the financial crisis. I think it has been typified by very much short-term thinking. I think even thinking that has put politics over law, let's say, in that the political needs of that particular crisis have trumped the actual legal requirements on the member states. Where do we go from here? I think part of it is that the regulations that the European Union have of the banking area weren't strong enough. I think that's being addressed now. But I have yet to clearly see that the European Union recognises that it made mistakes. And I think there probably will be treaty amendments in the future. And I think until such time as the European Union recognises it made severe mistakes in its approach to the financial crisis, I think it's going to be very difficult for countries like Ireland, where there is a referendum. Like, I would find it hard to go out and bang the drum for the European Union now, having seen how badly it handled the financial crisis.
Roderic O'Gorman, you're going to be running for Green Party Dublin West in a few weeks' time. We wish you the very best, and would be interesting to, it would be, as I say, good to have another LGBT candidate in the Dáil.
That's great, Mick. Thanks very much.
Much appreciated.
My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am.